republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Klein.
Here.
Alderman Clegg. Here. Alderman Fahey.
Here.
Alderman Donovan.
Here.
Alderman Bennett.
Here.
Alderman Eidman.
Here.
Alderman Rainey.
Here.
Alderman Prince. Alderman Steiger.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Happy New Year to you all. Hope you had a great holiday season. Glad to be back sitting at this table. At this point, we'll move to approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Presentations or awards, personal appearances. We'll skip down to city administrator report.
Got an updated report at your seat. Item 3, bring your attention to that. Office furniture is to be delivered next Tuesday. It'll probably be installed Tuesday and Wednesday. The board table is there now. That'll probably be put together tomorrow and Monday. So we're on schedule. We've done substantial completion of the building. So it's pretty much done, except for the small things that we're going to be doing. So we still have TVs to install on that. So move date is planned for February 19th, which puts us after billing and after the due date of billing, so that we're not conflicting with people coming and paying their bills. So I think the 19th is the best. It's a holiday. We would have been closed anyway. Staff can then take a day off sometime during the year mid-July. So be an extra holiday for them. Item 6, we're advertising for bids to finish the paving on North 4th Street. That's from Washington to LeCompte. So those ads will be in the paper. We've sent out 3 different notices to folks that have done work for us in the past. See if we can get them to bid. Staff did 2 hours of training yesterday on the new Genesis texting email notification system. After we had our meltdown and we got our brains back together, because there's so much, like any system anymore, there's so much data, so much that you can do. As we learn it over the next week or so, we'll start advertising it. We'll put it on the website. People can start signing up. We may not be sending texts immediately, but we want to get some early on templates set up so that we can do the texting if we need to. So if it's bad this weekend, there's not going to be any texting going out yet. We haven't gotten that far into it. But we did get shown the whole system. So we'll keep working on
How
that.
many people did you have sit through the?
There are 8 of us.
Geez, okay.
Yeah. We've got 8. It was recorded. So we've got other people that we're going to show it to afterwards. We just had to make sure we kept somebody
Alliance.
active up here.
Alliance sit in. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, because there's a good chance they're going to be using it the most.
Yeah. And police, I guess, too? Or not? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You talked about these templates, Happy. So in other words, basically you could limit, so not everybody gets every text, only people who are affected by like a water main break or something.
So the templates are just quick ways to get a message out. Inside of that, we can do geofencing. We can limit where it's sent. So if it's just a boil water order on 9th Street, we can limit it to that area that we would send it to. But if it's something overall, then we send it overall to everybody.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the information that people will sign up with, is to give us an address, which will give us a longitude and latitude so the GIS can pick that up. And that's how we'll be able to fence that in, fence in that information. And MoDOT sent out a tentative calendar for their call for projects for the Transportation Alternatives Program. That's what we're doing with the St. Mary's Road sidewalk. We talked about doing a sidewalk on South 4th Street. So we've had Cochran look at it. We haven't got an estimate back yet. Once I get the estimate back, I'll bring it to you, see if that's something you want to pursue. Keep in mind that the majority of the funds that we would have to spend aren't for 3 years, because it takes time to get the plans drafted and then get them approved, and then you finally move into the construction phase. Kind of what we're experiencing now in St. Mary's. Any questions?
So is that that's a grant type of project and stuff then?
Yeah,
What is the usual mix on those?
80/20.
80/20?
Yeah. Anything else? Any questions?
I should know the answer to this, but I don't. Does MoDOT set like the no right turn at M and 61, or is that something that the city has ordained?
On the sidewalk you're talking about?
No,
Right
the
on.
intersection where you can't turn right on red.
Oh, that's MoDOT.
Is that MoDOT?
Yeah, I think they look at it as the angle of those intersections. And that the view is not, not 90 degrees, it's less than that, so they.
At M and 61?
That's a 5-stop. That's
Yeah,
a
that's a
5.
5-stop, that's
Yeah.
why.
Are you looking to get a petition to cancel that 5-stop?
I've heard a ton of complaints about that over the years. Like, it seems unnecessary.
Let me know where to sign and I'll sign.
Okay.
Happy, I did have, while we're talking about traffic flow and stuff like that, I did have a person in my ward and stuff contacted me. They were in an accident right there, coming south on 61 right in front of the hospital. And they were getting in the left turn lane to make a left turn lane to come back into town and got rear-ended. Well, when they called the authorities, one comment the officer made, and they didn't remember who it was that there's a lot of accidents there. They respond to a lot of accidents there, but we went up and looked at the area and stuff, and it seems like there's more space that could be left there without a double yellow line, and then at least one more left turn arrow in there. There's only one there now, and it's way up at the beginning of the yellow line. And just wondering if something that we could contact MoDOT and have them maybe meet us there, talk about it, something to see if there's a little more, especially when like the Lime Kill's getting out or school gets out, there's a backlog of traffic there and it's causing some issues. They ended up getting rear-ended there. And like I said, was the comment the officer made. There's a lot of people in that exact lane gets rear-ended right there. So it wasn't, there's other accidents that happen there, I'm sure, but.
So we'll look back and see how many reports we've actually done at the intersection. It may just be perception that we've done a
Right.
lot. And if there are, then we'll see if the area engineer will meet with us.
Right, okay.
If you go to that point, could you also ask them about removing that? Right,
The
no,
5-stop?
right, yeah.
For the 5 line.
Or what the procedure would
Just
be
move
to
the
do
fifth
that.
line.
Well, yeah, abandon that, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
anything else?
Okay, thank you. Happy. Move to staff reports. We'll start with David Bova, Community Development Administrator.
Good evening, everyone. Got my report there. Just a few things to point out. The Heritage Commission meetings are moved back a week in January and February. Under permits, code enforcement, not too much going on. Those are mostly roofs, but we do have 4 houses that are continuing in different stages. Comprehensive plan, I did confirm with RPC, or actually I'll be confirming with RPC tomorrow, our next steering committee meeting, hopefully the final week of this month. But if not, it may drift into February. Second page, on the back, under property maintenance, just a few notes. 58 South Main. I have not heard from the owner, but do have some quotes coming in for our abatement if we do have to do it. Any questions?
We're running ads right now for some of those
Some of those.
abatements or some of those, not abatements, but,
You're talking about the next address?
Yeah.
Wegman is running those ads.
okay.
This is service by publication.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you, David. Next, Chief Steiger.
Good evening, everyone. You should have a copy of my report. Probably the biggest thing to talk about, once again, is personnel. We did have 2 retire in November, and lost 1. And since then, I put a new guy on in November and 1 in December. So we're not going down in staffing, but we're not improving either. We're kind of holding steady with that. I've also included a copy of the runs for the year. We ended up coming in within 1 of what my September, November, or October, November estimate was going to be. We ended up with 274, which is the highest in the almost 40 years I've been on the department. I like to joke that when I started, it was 40 calls a year. We thought we were busy. Now we're closing in on 300 a year. And the other thing I was going to bring up tonight is I went to a county chiefs meeting the other night, and we have the ISO organization coming in to the firehouse on January 29th. It's the last Monday of the month. So if anybody has questions about how the ISO operates or want to see what it's entailed in the ISO audits and things, you're welcome to show up and ask questions that night. It's geared towards the county fire departments and us, but they're welcome, and anybody wants to come in and ask questions of ISO and see how the system works and what's all there. So open to any questions.
Kenny, can you comment what the ISO really is, or our ISO rating, and how it affects?
ISO stands for Insurance Service Office, and basically what it is a third-party testing agency, and they rate your department as far as the fire department, the water supply for your area, and also the 911 dispatching service. The fire department gets 50% of the rating, the water department gets 40%, and dispatch services get 10% of the rating. And basically what they look at is your fire load, how much fire load you have in town, and what your capabilities are, and if you're meeting certain needs, being able to flow a certain amount of gallons per minute, and the manpower and the training and a whole bunch of other stuff goes into it. And what they do is they put out a rating, and then it's up to the insurance agents as to whether or not they use it. Majority will use that as a guideline. It's my understanding that there's one agency that doesn't use it, but they're going to follow along pretty close with what the rest of the insurance companies are doing. Is 95% of the insurance companies are doing it. They're getting the rating off of the ISO. The other one's going to be in that same ballpark. So even though they're not officially using it, they're kind of using it as a secondary thing. But they're the ones that help give us a rating, and then the insurance companies base your homeowner's insurance off of the rating that is given to us. And when I started, we were a class 7 in the city, and we are now a 4. So over the years, we've made some improvements.
How does 4 stand for other towns our size, or what's the rating?
We used to be really proud because we were a 4, same as Farmington, Perryville, and Festus. But Farmington, Festus both have full-time people now, and I know for sure that Farmington just went to a 3. And I just read a newspaper article the other day that Perryville has just gone to a 3. Part of their benefit is they added a second station, so they were able to space the trucks out, because they also look at location of your vehicles in relation to the population and everything based in it. But Perryville is now a class 3 also. Crystal City and Festus, I believe, are still 4s like us.
That ultimately comes back, what, for the cost of home insurance or
That's how they base homeowners insurance, and other insurances like commercial insurances for commercial buildings, things like that, is based off of ISO's rating on how we do as a fire department and water supply and everything.
Yeah, this is just one reason Mike and I has kind of been working with the fire department, trying to help them get staffed up and to keep people on board and stuff. But I've also kind of worked with them also of what can the city do to keep, like Kenny said, it's 50% on the fire department, 40% on the water department, of trying to keep those two departments in unison, keep them funded, keep the equipment that they need to affect all of our homeowners insurance and stuff. So that's why we put a lot of time and effort into keeping this going.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. This time we'll move to public comment. No public hearing, right? Okay. Take us to tonight's consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. No old business to discuss tonight, so we'll move to some new business. First item would be the approval of the Cortex style restroom bid of $86,818 through the Missouri Cooperative Purchasing Program for the replacement of the restrooms located at the Big Pavilion at Pierre Marquette Park. One note on that, you guys can see that it does not include foundation, plumbing, and electrical.
We're doing those items, I guess, in-house. And those were budgeted items.
We'll either do them in-house or have a quad for bid. Yeah, the foundation part we're looking at doing.
This was already approved by the Port Board, Park
Yes.
Board,
Yeah,
right?
This thing ever be able to be moved again? Once it's set? I mean, it comes off with a crane, I guess? It comes off a flatbed or something of those two pieces or something?
one piece.
Oh, it's a one piece. Oh, okay.
Pick it up, set it down. Everything should be located where it needs to go, where you set it, and then connect.
And which fund will be paying for that?
The park fund,
Park fund,
it's actually ARPA funds that we've set aside for the park.
right?
Park's picking up the other miscellaneous, the pad and the electric.
We got 160,000 dedicated for this because we were planning on getting two.
Yeah.
However, the price has jumped up about $20,000 for cost of materials and delivery. So we're now limiting it to one up by the big pavilion.
So this is not actually a bill, so do we make motion to approve, or how do we?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That will take us to a first reading of Bill number 4602. This is an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a 3-year contract for the provision of cemetery lawn mowing and maintenance services with K&J Landscaping of St. Genevieve, Missouri, in an amount not to exceed $50,400 over 3 years.
Happy, remind me what that last contract was? The
Same
amount?
price,
Yeah, how much
16,800 per year.
per year? Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Happily second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then take us to a first reading of Bill number 4603. This is an ordinance approving change order number 1 to the contract with Jokers Incorporated of St. Genevieve, Missouri on the Jefferson Street Sidewalk Improvements Project in an amount of $8,138.
Move to approve. Looks like we got some concrete out there today.
The concrete bottom has already been poured. For the first wall, there'll be a second wall to go in. Probably not till next week. When it warms up some. And then there'll be a concrete cap. That'll be the sidewalk.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion for a second reading.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second for a second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this will be a second reading of Bill number 4603, an ordinance approving change order number 1 to the contract with Jokers Incorporated of St. Genevieve, Missouri on the Jefferson Street Sidewalk Improvements Project in an amount of $8,138.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Pam, would you do a roll call, please?
Alderwoman Clegg-Horn.
Yes.
Alderman Fahey.
Yes.
Alderman Donovan.
Yes.
Alderman Bennett.
Yes.
Alderman Eidman.
Yes.
Alderman,
Yes.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes.
7 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Bill number 4603 now becomes ordinance 4523.
Thank you. We'll take us to a first reading of bill number 4604. This is an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to enter into an agreement with McLeany and Company as municipal advisors for the city of St. Genevieve.
Happy, just a quick question about this and stuff. I mean, what actually are they advising us on are future projects, but nothing to do with current finances?
It's for, if we go out for bonding, which we discussed, that's the purpose for them, is to be our advocate as we go out for bonding. So back in 2018, there was this recommendation from the state that you have a separate financial advisor for the city as opposed to the bonding agency, to the bonding company. So you don't want the bonding company to do both, and that's what they used to do. So now you hire somebody to give you advice, and then they will go out and get the bonding at whatever request that you say, whatever, just particular places you want them to look at first, or particular companies that you want them to put that bonding out for. That's what you have them do.
Mm-hmm.
But they're working on your behalf to get the rate the lowest, not.
Right.
There was some conflict that was looked at before.
So have we ever had any experience with this company, or is this the first?
I have, the city has not, but I have,
Okay.
and they've been very good to work with.
Correct me if I'm wrong too, Abby, but they can advise us on all of our different options for financing, not be just bonding. It could be other avenues that we could.
As current finances are future only bonding.
Right, and reading through their agreement, there's some, I mean, you can see they're kind of offering a lot of consultation services.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Take us to a first reading of bill number 4605. This is an ordinance of the city of St. Genevieve amending chapter 200 Police Department of the St. Genevieve Municipal Code of Ordinances by adding section 200.100 mineral area major case squad.
Second?
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Any other business to discuss at this time?
Happy, I don't know if this is the proper time. Recently, there was a meeting held in St. Genevieve. It was some local business leaders, actually state representatives and stuff were also there. They're kind of sounding an alarm about sales tax issues, that they are watching very closely the downturn. And I'm just wondering where we set there, as of the end of the year, and where moving forward, being proactive rather than reactive.
Are they talking about the amount of sales tax that's out there now is higher and
Lower.
causing-
They're seeing much lower things happening and
They're
stuff.
looking at lower revenue.
Yes.
So over the year, so we're looking at a one-year trend. We were ahead of the previous year, which was ahead of the previous year. And I think the last couple of months, there wasn't as much compared to maybe the previous year, but I don't know if we've seen that trend yet. And I'm not going to sound an alarm after seeing 2 months of downturn, because we haven't got, sometimes people don't report immediately, and it will be included in the next report. So I don't know if there's that issue yet. For us, it looked good for the year. We ran probably 60,000 ahead of what we budgeted and what we estimated. So I don't see that yet.
Well, the county, because of two businesses that had closed, one just down the street here and one out in the county, which evidently was a pretty major contributor and stuff. But I just want to make sure we are well aware, of what's going on.
Yeah, we get the reports and we can compare what we estimate we're looking at for the year, what we budget. Again, at this point, we're running ahead.
Okay.
That 60,000 that you just mentioned, that sales tax only, or was that combined between
Sales tax only.
sales tax only? Okay.
And I'd have to look again at what we had for property tax. The property tax was still, again, around what we budgeted. So we're in line with what we estimated. And we try to look at it conservatively as well.
Right.
So our numbers, when we brought those to you in October, didn't include what we see as the extra that we received from sales tax. So we're more likely to hold that to the next budget year, but we did see an increase, a significant increase.
So is that something we get those figures monthly or,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So it's something we can visit occasionally? Okay.
You get that information in your monthly report from the treasurer.
And then I had a gentleman come, wants to donate, put a flagpole up at City Hall, a larger one. They're just a small expense for the city. It's like $500.
How can we pay for it? Because I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. Somebody's,
Custard?
It's not that tall. No, but he has put one in front of the nutrition center. Be the same exactly. It's 30 foot,
We certainly have a 20-foot roughly.
20.
Yeah, so we're looking at 30 footer.
We have a 25 now?
I think we have a 20.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the one at the senior center is 25?
25.
So this would be 5 foot taller than that. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know.
Are you all good with making that improvement to the front of the building?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I just don't want to do it without everybody's.
You need a motion?
No, it's actually under the amount that you have to worry about. Moving. But because we're doing an improvement to the building, which is why the gentleman brought it here as well, it's like, well, it's part of that improvement, let's get everybody on board with it.
well, he's an active veteran and stuff, so that's,
Yeah, he's going to donate his time to put it up. And
yep.
Yeah, very cool.
Anything else right now?
I've got one, Mayor. Just this past week, just talk about the housing issue that we're having here in the area. I placed 2 ads for a client and one for myself, and it was for rental properties. And this is just kind of for general information. In 48 hours, I received 160 roughly contacts for 2 different properties.
This is ones you put up for sale.
No, these are rental listings, people looking for rental
Place to
properties.
live.
One was a home and one was a house and one was a mobile home. And in 48 hours, I received, whether it was a phone call, a text, a Facebook message, or an email, I received almost 160 inquiries about those 2 properties. Now, that's not houses for sale, this is rental property, but it goes into the housing crisis, housing dilemma that we are facing here. So I just wanted to pass that on to the board and to any listeners that are watching that. We recognize that, and I think we all know that we're in that when we're trying to solve some of those problems as well. Right. So
How many properties are still for sale? And
I
was
looked.
7.
I looked last week. I didn't look this week. We were at 41, and that's a small little lot. This is countywide in the county.
Right.
That's from a small little lake lot all the way up to our most expensive listing right now in the county is about $7 million listing. And so there was about 41 last week. And if you would have looked 3 years ago, there was roughly always about 100, give or take. So we're 2/3 or of what we normally would be. 2/5 of
Market's
what we
there.
normally would be. Yeah. So
Related to that, every time we approve an Airbnb special use thing, we take another house off the rental market. Make it available to towners, but not families who are here.
Yeah.
And we have, I think generally, have we ever turned down an Airbnb request?
I don't know that.
Not without,
And there
laws, I don't think.
are communities that have set limits on that.
St. Charles just recently did.
Roachport did.
And I think fair market, I mean, I think you should be able to, I'd have a tough time limiting it. I think we need to look at other ways first I think the free market should, dictate how you should do that. But but there's definitely an issue too at the same time. So I don't know how you pick and choose who gets to turn their property into,
Well, I think the popularity, the demand for that has exploded over the last handful of years. And I think municipalities are just now starting to reckon with it and try to figure out how to, because you reach a point where you reach a saturation point, right? Or there are too many where you're diluting the market. And what you said, Alderman Fahey, about removing potential long-term residences, whether they're owner-occupied or non-owner occupied. So there's an argument to be made that we probably need to monitor that.
And then we're also on a mission to entice people to come here. So it's
Yeah.
catch-22.
Well, and, our tourism, it depends on those as well. I think if you talk to any owner of an Airbnb, I think they'll tell you that they're busy.
But at the same time, our new marketing plan is a little bit towards gearing not just for the day tourists, but to entice those people to potentially move here full time. So part of that new marketing plan is going to have a component to that to have they like it and they might move here full time. So we're trying to do
But
balance all
at the same time, we're attracting them, and they can't find it, if they want to come, they can't find a house to rent or to buy.
Your point is true.
Yeah. We're in a housing crisis,
Yep.
so.
100%.
But if there's a percentage of your housing that is Airbnb or rental status, the chances of it being maintained and aesthetically pleasing, the Airbnb is head and shoulders above.
Also,
Derelict or vacant, or,
Derelict. Or some status of some of the rental properties that we have in town.
all very good points.
thank you, Mayor.
Yep, thank you. Anything else? Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Do you want to stick around? Call the work session to order, and we'll move to approval of tonight's work session agenda.
To approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Bring us to work session item number 1. This is a follow-up on stormwater study, and I guess the next date. Yep. Okay.
So the city had put money aside for the stormwater study. This is area number 1, working on trying to move forward to see if there's a way to retain the water better than what is happening now. We have 2 different plans. This is the one with the retention basin that Dave Van Laer from Cochrane has been working on, and I gave the original presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Put the hand up. See, I gotta leave that one.
Since I only have one left.
Yeah. Still some stuff together.
Same thing. I think this is more.
While we're finishing the test everything right. If anybody doesn't get one, just holler. I've got more copies. I'm happy to kind of introduce what we're talking about, but so we were asked to evaluate a handful of different watersheds around the city. This particular area, we were asked to focus on some flooding issues. Generally occurring at Market and 9th Street, and then on down from Market Street down to Gabourey Street. And as Happy said, we looked at a few different options, and we were
we recommended, and then we were also directed to pursue this continued evaluation and analysis of constructing a dry retention basin on the Mississippi line property, which you generally see a location map of on the plan I'm holding up here, the aerial photo. You'll see on there, we do show a blue outline of the location that we've identified for where this would be located, and that's very similar to what we talked about in the presentation back in 2023. So after a meeting with staff and the property owners that we'd be dealing with for the project, we were directed to go ahead and get on site and do some survey work. We were able to do that late fall, early winter, once the crops were out and the leaves were, the vegetation was down off the trees. The larger 12 by 18 sheet you see, that's kind of a product of the field work we were able to do. So to kind of help you get oriented, I was kind of hopeful that between the two plans, the aerial photo and then the larger sheet, you kind of be able to make it clear where we're at. If you look at the top of the sheet, you'll see a property owned by Citizens Electric. That's the electric substation that you see in the aerial photo. And then in the upper right hand, that's the school property. And just kind of help get you oriented there. You'll also see if you look at the larger sheet, we do depict the tree line kind of as a bubbled line, showing the existing tree line. Again, that's that wooded area down south of the electric substation. And then in the middle of everything you're seeing here, you see a kind of a squiggly line running right through the middle of this. That's the ditch or drainage way that's out in this wooded area, where about 100 acres of this field drains to, that we're going to try to provide some retention for. So also on the 12 by 18 sheet, you'll see a blue line. That's generally the boundary of what this retention basin would look like during a 100-year storm event. The boundary of that is approximately 3 acres. So again, that's pretty close to what we've been talking about previously. If you remember, during our initial conversations, we were talking about a wet basin. We kind of created a lake. We were directed to divert from that plan and then go back to a dry basin, which is what we're showing now. So on a large storm event, we'd end up with about a 3 acre boundary of our basin, and obviously we'd have varying depths, but a 3 to 4 foot depth over that area is what we'd be looking at max ponding. This would be accomplished by building a berm across the drainage way, which you see in the lower right hand side of the exhibit here. And then through the berm, we would build an outlet structure. This entire 3 acre retention pond would drain through one 12-inch pipe. So that kind of helps you understand that we've got a lot of water coming in. We're necking it all down to one 12-inch pipe. That restricts the flow and causes it to pond up, and then it slowly releases. This would drain out over the course of 8 to 12 hours is what we would see. And then over in the lower right-hand corner, just a quick schematic to kind of help visualize what the outlet structure would look like on the retention basin going through the berm. Not that different than any other storm structure around town. Just a typical outlet structure for a retention basin. On the exhibit, we do show a 50-foot buffer strip. And that's something that was discussed on several occasions to try to keep this area from silting in from all the farm ground around. So we were able to kind of fit everything in here and maintain a 50-foot vegetated buffer above the 100-year ponding elevation. The last handout I gave you is an updated cost estimate based on the latest information we have. And there are some
Before
changes.
you get into that, can you explain what happens on a larger rain event with the dry basin and how that's set up?
Yeah, for sure. Good question. So if you go back to the 12 by 18 exhibit, if you go down to the berm that we're building across the drainage way on the, I'm going to call that the northeast side of that, you'll see we're calling out a new concrete spillway. And then a riprap channel that leads back down to the existing ditch. So with any storm design we do, there's always a, what if a storm comes along bigger than what we've designed for? And what would happen in that event is it would spill over, more or less undetained, it would spill over into this emergency spillway and dump into the channel, similar to what it does today.
So Dave, the only raised elevation is this lower berm. This whole entire area here, basically, this would be ground level right into this area.
Correct. There'd be
grass area.
Correct. There'd be a little bit of shaping that would go on in the upper part of the basin, and we would be excavating the material that we need to build the berm from that upper area also.
But this bottom of this area then would be flat, except for the ditch.
So that's something that is kind of undefined at this point. One of the tasks we are working on right now is trying to get the Corps of Engineers to give us a determination on whether or not they're going to claim jurisdiction on this area. So we've been in contact with the Corps, and we've requested they perform what they call a jurisdictional determination. So they go out there and they determine if they're going to claim the jurisdiction, and if they are, what requirements they would put on our work. So that's something we're trying to figure out right now. I think one option is we leave it how you see it here today, with that ditch would kind of remain in the bottom of this. Something to discuss with your maintenance staff and public works is, potentially this is easier to maintain if there's not a ditch running through the bottom of it, and it's something we could just get in there with brush hogs, and it would be easier to maintain, I think, if this ditch wasn't run through the middle of it. Obviously, the ditch is going to grow up with trees, just, I think, create problems that you wouldn't have if we were able to just kind of slick this thing off and get it into just a flat bottom. So does that answer your question?
Sure. Yeah, I was looking at, as far as the maintenance and stuff, because we have that now out in back of Point Base with the ditch out there that's hard to maintain the actual ditch. The areas around it is easier because it's more level, but anytime you have a ravine, trees grow up and becomes a problem in there. But am I looking at this right? Is basically at the top end up here, we're at an elevation of 433 feet. Coming down even into the bottom of the basin, there's only a 3-foot drop down to 430 feet.
3 to 4 foot, yeah.
Yes, that's correct. And then that
It's only a whole 3 to 4 foot.
that ditch that runs through there is on the order of 8 to 10 feet deep.
Right, then it
Below
drops down to like 420 at the bottom of the ditch here. So there's,
Yep.
seems like there's more of an incline up there, but just looking at your aerial, and of course this is an older aerial, there has been a lot of work done, in this area and stuff, which is going to add more water probably to this basin. Have you taken that into consideration?
Specifically the school?
Yes.
Yeah, so the school creates a differential runoff of about 20 CFS. So obviously there's water running off from that property prior to them building there. The grass field ran to this location. Them doing their development there, the runoff increases from their property by about 20 CFS. And we have the option to build that capacity into this basin if we want to, which I think the direction has been that we do. But we have the ability to build that capacity into this retention basin, yes.
So these numbers reflect that? These cost estimates?
Yes.
Because I'm just wondering, on their site, I take it they'll have to take care of their own detention basin?
But where are they gonna send that?
Well,
Well, but
It'll have to come
so,
back.
so I think there's options with the way the city can handle this. If they provide their own detention basin, you really don't need to,
Account for it.
you don't need to detain it again because they're going to release it from their property as if their property were still farmland. So I think, and I don't know if it's been settled for sure if the school has finalized the plan for their stormwater or not.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I don't think they have. Yeah.
So I think one thing that some cities do is they'll say, we're not going to require you to build a detention basin on your property. We're going to build a retention basin and you need to contribute to the cost equivalent to if you were to build a basin on your own property.
so I take it, with that, their water is going to run into this basin.
Definitely.
I don't know the elevations up there. I see where they've done a lot of work lowering the whole elevation of this property, but I don't know which way the water goes. I assume it heads for the ditch and stuff, but there's, Mississippi Lime had to put in, because of the property they sold off to the school district, they had to put in some culverts.
Yep.
Where exactly are those culverts located? Because I know DNR was involved in that.
Those culverts are more or less right in the location where we're putting our berm. So rather than, we've kind of accounted for that and looked into this, and the new access across the ditch to get to the other side of the creek would be driving across the berm of the retention basin. And as shown, I believe that's shown as 20 foot wide right now. So plenty wide to be able to drive large equipment across.
Yeah, because it is access to more farm ground on the other side is what they're.
Yep.
So, for the school, they're gonna either have to build a detention basin or a tank or of some sort, or participate with us so that they don't use up all that land mass to, because they're gonna, it's mostly roof and parking lot. They're gonna use a lot of it for roof and parking lot. It's gonna be solid surfaces, and you're saying it's 20,
Additional 20 CFS. It's either 2 or 3 acres of impervious area. I believe is what we saw on the plan that was provided to us.
And is that taken into consideration just what they're developing now, or because, the question I've always had, and I actually asked the superintendent here, but we didn't get into that discussion, they own almost 12 acres there. That seems like a lot of property to only build a 31,000 square foot building, because they actually went back and bought additional property. So I'm just trying to look into the future a little bit of saying where, how can we build everything into our basin to take care of everybody? One, without knowing the whole plan up here, and our future, because I hate to spend $200,000 and build this thing, and then 5 years down the road,
It's not big enough.
it's not gonna be big enough, right? That's my question. Why are we only building it to 100-year? And there's only going to be more development. There's not going to be less development. All that area inside there to 9th Street, eventually that's going to get developed. Now, not all that probably drains down into this, but a lot of it I think would probably drain. And then everything to the east would potentially, if it ever gets developed. Look, the 100-year ponding designation, why was that chosen? I don't know, maybe that's standard. I don't know.
Standard practice,
Yeah,
I would
okay,
say.
Okay, yeah.
It's some cities probably wouldn't even go that far with their stormwater requirements, but fairly common practice among municipalities that Storm sewers, your pipes and collection system are designed to a 25-year event. And then the retention basins are designed to a 100-year event.
Well, and I don't want it to seem that I'm just targeting the school district. And Joe, you brought up a point of other people developing in this area, and there is a remote chance of that. But, you know, Mississippi Lime owns the majority of the property around here all the way down to 9th Street. I'm not sure. That's probably a stretch to think some of that might be turned into a development. But, you know, as I look at these numbers and I look at the original cost estimate, you knew this was coming, but, you know, this is up about $40,000 from our original. And by the time this thing comes into possibly being, you know, where are we going to be? But, and how do we, how is the city not the bearer of all of the costs, and how can we be fair and shake this thing down to everybody who's shedding water up there is the real. And I don't know, have we had any?
District's open to a conversation about their water.
Yeah, and I wasn't just targeting them. It's
Well,
just
but I
because
think
they are
it's-
the only ones developing up there now.
Well, given what we know, we can only operate with the information we know right now.
Right.
And I think, like what we've said, they could either buy into that option or they would have to formulate another plan. But the school district is aware that this is happening. And I personally have had discussions with Dr. Taylor about that. So I think they're open to a discussion. Now, as far as future development for the school district, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they were to develop further out there, they would also have to come up with a new stormwater for anything that they did. So while we can talk about accounting for it right now, they would still have to account for it in the future. We would require that, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I think that's exactly right. You take the mentality of, you know, we're going to try to project how much development's going to happen in this drainage basin, and we're going to try to account for all that in this design. Or are we going to account for what we know is happening right now, and that's the school? And then if future development happened, the cost of stormwater improvements either on their property or at the regional detention basin they'd be at the developer's expense.
But isn't it safe to assume if this is the natural flow of water down through there, that anything in the future is somewhere going to end up in that same area?
Yeah.
Anything, so about 100 acres drain into this
Right.
3-acre basin that we're creating here. So yeah, any construction within that 100 acres increases the runoff to our basin.
So the city can do the investment now, or developers can run into the cost of having to do their own stormwater plan in the future and increase those costs on any future developments that they do inside that, you know.
if we had the capacity, future development, could they at that point buy into that?
Yes.
So that could be a potential cost offset in the future.
Yeah, but aren't you then having to increase the area of something or rebuild it or something? Or are you just talking about letting them run their water in there?
No, I think
You're saying about if you're going to try to guess what's going to happen in the future, then you would have that to a certain size and hope that that would cover everything that would be developed in the future. And then they would have to pay into it instead, in lieu of doing stormwater on their property.
We've seen cities like set up stormwater districts. And this detention basin would be designed to provide detention for 100 acres. So the cost of the project divided by 100 acres, every acre you develop, you pay in that share of the project.
I mean, if we're going to extend Ridgeway or Maple or Virginia, however you want to say that, to 61, I know I think that's everyone's goal would be to alleviate that traffic monstrosity that we face every time school gets out or we have an event or something like that. I mean, I think we all know that we have to try to get that extension. I know we'll have to work with our corporate partners and the school and everybody. I mean, but I think everybody wants that extension from however you would call that, Virginia Maple or Ridgeway.
Everybody but the neighbors.
Well, of course, but,
But without that, that traffic's gonna back up.
Right,
Yeah.
So.
so actually it makes it worse for the neighbors up there. Then you get parking issues and not just traffic issues, you get parking issues. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Are we building this big enough? Because we're gonna get development up there.
You hope.
That's what, I hope we're right. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, considering Mississippi Lime owns everything around there, I mean, it's not like it's privately owned. They're probably harder to turn loose a piece of property than a private individual would be, but I guess there's a possibility.
Was, going back to when we just, was the dry basin the more expensive of the two options that were previously presented? Do you recall?
I don't recall offhand.
Hey, well, I was just curious.
So I just, it was noted that the new estimate is, there's an increase in cost. I did want to point out a few items that had led to that. And with that question, Mr. Mayor, I don't, my recollection is that when this was originally presented with the cost estimate, it was for the wet basin. And I think the estimate that was presented to the city was based on that option. One item that you see in the new estimate that does lead to additional cost that you wouldn't have with the wet basin is the amount of finished grading and seeding to be done. Obviously with the dry basin, the entire 3 acres plus the perimeter that's disturbed would need restoration work done to it. So there is an additional cost with that. The other main item was just having the actual field work and topographic survey done. The quantity of earthwork needed to be done to build this berm is larger than was originally estimated from the aerial contours that were previously used. And then from there, there's just a few items that have been added to the project. It primarily represents the increase in cost.
I can assure you, in talking with most all the homeowners downstream, nobody wanted a body of water up there, permanent body of water up there.
Sure. I get it. I was just
And I don't think the
curious.
property owner around here was favorable to that either. So I think the dry basin is still the only option, but so it sounds like we have a more detailed plan to work with and stuff so that we can start some type of,
Start discussions with the property owner,
right,
if that's what the board wants us to move forward with. That would be the next step. As I said, if we can't move forward on that, then this becomes a moot point.
So in my mind, the next things that happen here are we need to finish with the Corps of Engineers and get direction from them on what they're going to allow us to do. We need to decide how we're going to handle and try to account for future development, because that could impact the size and shape of what we're trying to do here. And then once we've settled on our approach there, then we need to try to define here's what we're going to approach the property owner with and ask for property to purchase or an easement or whatever that would look like. But I think there's a couple steps we've got to get through before we can approach the property owner with really what our request is at this point.
One other thing that they mentioned from the original meeting we had with the property owner was DNR. I assume that all this is compliant with what they would require.
Yeah, so this berm is really only, and again, it varies, but about 8 feet tall. it's obviously taller right where it goes through the ditch, but in general, this isn't a dam that would be regulated by DNR.
I just remember them bringing it up in that meeting that we discussed.
Yep, no, you're right, they did bring it up.
Do you think we need to have a contingency to make this larger and accommodate?
So I think that depends on how likely you think additional development is in this drainage basin. And what the city's mentality is going to be on future development.
Dave, you mentioned a number in the school area up here, their amount of water or whatever. What percentage of that is this the total percentage of this basin?
So there's about 100 CFS dumping in, it's 100 cubic feet per second. And the increase from the school was 20.
So about 20%,
20%.
right? Okay.
20% increase from that development.
So I'm sorry, can you go back and, in your opinion, do you think this needs to accommodate a larger size for future development?
There's two approaches. We can take the approach where we oversize this now with the expectation that there's going to be development in this basin, and the developers then will not need to build their own.
Or a larger
basin.
rain event?
Or a larger rain event, yeah, same, agreed,
Yeah.
same idea.
Or the-
Or we take the approach that we're gonna account for what's there now, and then detention of future development will be the responsibility of the developer. In general, I think it would be better practice to provide regional detention rather than having a bunch of small detention basins scattered throughout this drainage area. I think we better have a regional detention basin. I think it would work better. And it just, your goal is for this area to develop, it just creates more developable property probably also, where developers aren't having to take up valuable land with construction individual retention basins.
So just an idea to accommodate Joe's of more capacity and stuff. I mean, would that involve just raising this berm and?
That's one way we could do it. You'll see you can only raise to a certain point before we would start backing up onto the school property. Right now that's about 3 feet above, but that elevation's about 3 feet above. It's 50 or so feet away from the property corner. But if you go up another 3 feet or so, then you'd be backing up water onto another property owner.
But you were talking the depth of this is only 3 to 4 feet, but if you're talking another 3 feet, you're talking about a 50% increase almost. in
Yeah,
Capacity.
yeah. So there's certainly ways to increase the amount of storage that we're providing, and either provide detention for larger storms and or provide detention for future development. Again, I would kind of reiterate what I said earlier. We can design for a bigger storm, but there's always a bigger storm that's out there to come along. So, at some point we kind of have to decide, well, here's our criteria, and kind of just base that on standard practice.
And that is the 100-year number, right?
Yeah.
But that's what is empty farm ground right now.
My crystal ball's not telling me much. Yeah,
I'm optimistic, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe it would, I almost thought about bringing this and I didn't. Maybe it would help if we brought, and this is just something we could provide to Happy, just an exhibit that shows the 100 acres that drains to this. And maybe that would, I think everybody kind of generally has an idea what it does, but just seeing that graphically, we could say, okay, we think there's potential that, the school could expand And then let's plan for there being 100 houses in that area. And just pick something and run with it. We can try that, certainly.
Because your original area did have an outline of basically the top of that area.
Yeah,
Right.
if you can visualize, there's a ridge that runs through there after 61, and that's what we're going for.
Well, I mean, I understand some of these questions are hard to field and some of them are even hard to ask and stuff, but I'd rather know going into something that we've met as many contingencies as we can and dealt with as many of the people, you know's wishes and stuff and accommodated as, I mean, that's what cities are supposed to do, but there's always that cost factor that you have to be fair to the taxpayer about.
You talked about
Happy.
increasing the berm, do you also look at increasing the size of the detention basin? Going, with the width and length, go larger?
So again, kind of think of this as there's a valley out there, and we're doing a little bit more than this, but for the most part, all we're doing is building a berm across the valley. So we're not grading the full 3 acres out to change the shape of it and doing a whole lot of earthwork. So really, you would make the berm taller, and then it would just, during a storm event, it would fill more of the valley with water. Yep.
Yeah, because you look at these are topographical lines on the map. I mean, right outside here, we're at 435. Right in the center, we're at 433. And right at the water line, we're basically 432. So the area is fairly flat, except when you get down this
Yeah,
way, so-
that wooded area kind of flattens out. It's
Right.
flatter than what the surrounding fields are that you see.
So increasing the berm, would we also increase the storm pipe size? I mean, if you're doubling your detention
Hold it longer.
amount, it's just gonna hold it longer, but
We have to look through all that. I think it would be similar in size. They'd probably get a little bit longer. If your berm gets taller, the bottom gets wider along with it. Probably not a significant change in cost associated with the outlet structure or the culverts going in.
Just kind of curious, what really pushed that we had to have DNR involved in this? Was it, I've heard some talk about the depth of that ravine or the size of that ravine was bigger. And I know Mississippi Lime had to, when they put those pipe in there, they had to got DNR involved in those 3 pipe also.
Are you talking about the Corps of Engineers?
Pardon me?
Are you talking about the Corps of Engineers?
I believe it was the Corps that was
Was it
involved.
Corps of Engineers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me, Corps of Engineers.
So we contacted the Corps, simply knowing that I think there's a possibility that they could say that they claim jurisdiction over this and to prevent from putting the city in a bad spot with the Corps of Engineers. We felt like that needed to be part of the due diligence of this project and make sure that there wasn't a red flag to be raised.
And the DNR would be involved because you talked about the, where you're damming it up. But because it's over an acre, we have to get a permit anyway.
We'll need a land disturbance permit, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's almost just an administrative permit. You apply for it online and get it the same day. So
So they'll be aware of it.
Yeah.
At the project.
So happy with a meeting with Mississippi Lime just to show them what we have so far. Is that a good starting point?
I can call and talk to their rep and see if he wants to sit down and talk about what we've got at this point. But that we would still want to look into something, have more of the engineering, what they requested, to get a little deeper into it, so they could present that to the powers that be.
Yeah, because the word that I got from them was they were interested in seeing what they could do to help. So,
Well, I think they wanted to know the scope, right?
Right.
They were wanting to know the size of the basin. I think was there, if I recall correctly from that meeting, that
Right.
was one of the biggest things they were trying to do. That they needed to know was how big this was going to be. So this clearly gives us an idea of that. So I don't know that it's, sure we could share it.
One more question is, in that meeting that we had with them, one of their personnel brought up the fact that further down this area, the city street is, and properties up 9th Street and stuff are contributing to the lower area of flow. And I think we've addressed some of that with size out those culverts and stuff like that, but I'm just wondering how we can pleasantly address where most of this water is coming from without.
Well, but does the combination of the two, was that creating the bigger issue? Where if we slow it down further up that hill to where it's a more manageable flow, does the water run off from 9th Street? Now that it's not a combination of the two, we've slowed this down, this water is still going to naturally run. Does that create more preferable situation down there? You're talking about 9th and Market, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I think that was, I mean, because that was all part of the same study, right? That whole area was more like, and we felt like, I don't want to step on your toes, Dave, but you were saying further up the chain was really causing the majority of the issues because that water was just free flowing down that, into that creek and down that.
Well, as much as anything, it's the area where we built the basin is where we have an opportunity to. There's no way to catch the water coming out of those neighborhoods now and try to do anything with them. It's all built out. So there's really there's no way to try to address that.
It's just that's where the possible damage was happening, was on down that line with a couple new houses and shops and stuff that's been built there, so.
This will have a dramatic improvement effect on.
What we have here will take the flow, if you just look at, if you look at where this basin would discharge right now, where there's a 30-inch pipe that comes out from under the berm. Just coincidentally, on a 100-year storm, the flow at that point is about 100 CFS. If you build this basin, that will be just a little under 20. So that's the impact that this has. It reduces the flow coming out of this 100 acres from about 100 CFS down to about 20 CFS.
I'd like to see just one more iteration, just one size larger to see if we're optimistic, say we are going to get a little bit of growth in the future. I'd like to look maybe one.
We can certainly do that. I was maybe going to say we should consider before showing this to anybody, maybe trying to get this as big as we think we're potentially going to do it.
Yeah.
And
That's what you call it.
rather than show them one thing and then try to come back and say, hey, we want to make it a little bit bigger. That'd be my only advice.
I think we probably owe it to future residents and future boards to have our eye towards the future and future growth when we're planning these projects out. I think that's gotten us into a little bit of the quandary that we're in right now, is that maybe we didn't prepare for that growth before it happened. And now we're addressing it now, and it's obviously pretty expensive.
This new spillway you're showing here off to the right and stuff like that, that's basically an overflow.
Yep. Yeah, it's just an armored low point in the berm
Right.
in case we can't push everything to the outlet structure, the water needs somewhere to go.
Which will handle additional water flow in the event we have more than the 100-year. Right.
Yep.
And if this increases over to the school property, we can bring them into the discussion as well.
All things have to start somewhere.
Yep.
So kind of based on discussion, maybe it'd be appropriate to kind of assume more of a full build out on the school property. You know, just kind of look at, okay, what more could they do above what they're doing now? And then maybe work with staff to kind of see what might be a plausible number of houses that could be built. And is the thought it would be residential development? Or any, maybe not.
I'd like to think so, but tough to say right now.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'd see commercial out there.
Well, if you were to put a road in,
The road's an X factor here.
but I mean, the property owner has consistently said no to any other development, so. Yeah, and I don't know if they want residential more industrial or commercial, so that you're not living there and across from the factory. So. But I think, taking that into account, also if you want to look at sizing it for a 125-year event. And
It kind of accomplishes the same thing. We can look at it either way, to be bigger storm or more impervious area.
Yeah.
So sure. I think it's okay. We can work with staff and kind of come back with based on the feedback we've had tonight, kind of round all this up and come back with another iteration on this.
So with this point of elevation here next to the school property, because I wouldn't want to infringe on them, we could change the shape of this some to go northwest or,
2020.
Yeah, we'd have to figure out how to do that, yeah.
right. Can we keep these happy?
Every day, I think so.
Sure.
So James,
Got some property owners down here that's been after me on what's going on with it, so.
give him a good idea.
Yep.
Tell them Santa brought this to Christmas.
What's that?
Tell them Santa brought this to Christmas.
Yeah, thank you very much as always for your help. Thank you for work.
Patiently
Anything else,
waiting.
just let us know. Okay.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Any other discussion at this time on this topic? Okay.
Pretty quiet, Joe. You sure you don't?
I don't know. I asked a lot of as many as I could.
All right.
Well,
there.
I do have
Go
one.
ahead.
Happy, have we, as far as the other areas and stuff and MoDOT, have we had any further communication with them to push them along a little bit, or
I haven't heard anything from them or any feedback from them.
As far as extending that road,
what's it?
as far as the road extension there?
No, as far as down by Shoe Plumbing and
Yeah, the one on Center Drive, I
Oh, I
think
see.
is the one that was MoDOT had earmarked that.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something we can,
I mean, we've submitted, I don't know what else we can do.
we what?
We have submitted it to them, let them know we believe that this is an improvement that needs to be made. And they haven't paved that road yet, which they've talked about doing the last couple of years. So I don't know if they're redesigning it maybe for that purpose. I've not heard.
So a friendly reminder that we're still waiting.
We could shoot a quick email to the engineer, the MoDOT engineer we were working on with that, and just see if anything has changed since last time we talked. And I can get that correspondence to Happy.
That'd be great.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good one, Bob, because I was talking to one of the business owners there and was kind of curious about
Yeah.
an update on that too, so. Happy when we had, and I don't want to have a discussion about it during, but we talked about making sure that the data that you'd got from the St. Louis Municipality Association on the data that you got on the trash rates, the haulage rates was correct. That one of the aldermen, Mr. Prince is not here, but I think he was doubted some of those numbers. Did you have a chance to verify that those numbers were correct on the?
I didn't pursue it anymore because we turned down even worrying about the, trying to contract with the trash company, so I didn't pursue it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I thought with the way that we voted, we were missing people and we had one undecided, and so I didn't know we completely turned that spigot off.
I mean, I take the vote for what it is.
Okay.
And, we've got enough projects going on that, adding that was, if it seemed like it was a no-go, and, I wasn't going to pursue it any further.
Okay.
I still got the data on the computer, but
Okay.
Sorry, you're questioning that $11 figure as being accurate? Because I haven't found anybody that's paying that, but I haven't asked but a handful.
Yeah. No, I think it was the municipalities that also had that. I don't think there was any here locally that was charging that. I think it was people that were under a unified contract that were paying those rates.
because what you'll see is the city may contribute to that, and that's why that rate would be as low as it is.
Yeah. Okay.
And they'll pull money out of the general fund to help pay for that.
One other question I had, we have that loss of a business. I was kind of wondering what the impact was going to be. If you lose $500,000 in sales, what the sales tax ramification is going to be for the loss of that business. Could I ask you guys to do some numbers if that was, maybe a $500,000 to maybe a $1 million? I don't know what their sales are. I'm just, trying to speculate what that might be for an impact for the city's revenue this year in sales tax.
So, since we're almost at 10%, wouldn't you just take 10% away?
Well, do we collect that whole 10%? That's not all city, is it?
No.
That's what so I was
No, we
wondering.
don't. It's the smallest portion.
Yeah,
3% of that 10%.
3%?
Yeah.
But you're talking about a small portion of that business. I mean, the vehicle sales, that still stays here.
Vehicle
Well,
sales go to where the person lives. So if they sell a vehicle over here and it goes to somebody that lives in Farmington, the tax goes there. So if somebody buys a vehicle, if they go to Twin City Toyota or
And
Ruther,
come here.
they come back, that sales tax comes back here.
But then also the loss of the other services and,
It's a loss of jobs, it's a loss
Yeah.
of,
Right.
other businesses that help, that they
sales
buy
tax
from.
on parts and
Yeah.
pieces, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so the sales tax, the only number we would have directly from them would be parts from the service department.
yeah.
Happy that does bring up a question, on our transportation tax. Is that only collected in the city, or do we share a portion of countywide?
We have our own transportation tax. The county has a transportation tax, and we get I don't know if there's a percentage that we get from the county every year on that.
Right?
Okay, thank you. If you just did $1 million in sales, 10% of that, and then we get 30% of that, so 30,000 roughly just in.
If it was like a regular retail business, it's just not like a regular retail.
Well, hopefully the parts and service work just gets dispersed locally. More than hope.
Yeah. Yeah. The value of shopping local, I mean, it just, if we want to have viable businesses, we have to try to preach that to shop local as much as we can. So,
All right, anything else to discuss at this time? Okay,